too. So the other day I was driving, punching dials on the radio, and a Christian, I don't know who it was, but a Christian radio, and I heard this guy say, the great Christian hope is manifest, accomplished in Revelation 19. Jesus in the sky on his horse, the sword coming out of his mouth. Ta-da! There, bam, there you go. You know, whether that's the rapture or whether he's coming back to take care of business, that's the great hope. You know, wait a second. We've just been talking about these 12 books of the minor prophets, plus then there's Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, the major prophets, but all through Deuteronomy and the Torah. You know, I don't recall ever having that picture being expressed, that hope. And that's in Revelation 19. That's clear at the end. That was, they say that John got that revelation, apocalypto, on the Isle of Patmos around 90 AD. Yeshua was put to death around 30. So that's like 60 years after Yeshua was here and gone that John gets this vision. So it's like, wait a minute. The tail end, one little blip, one little scene in a pretty big picture show, Book of Revelation, one little scene of one little vision of one man 30 or 60 years after Yeshua was here and gone, that's the great hope that the entire world is waiting for. But yet it doesn't ever show up as even a suggestion that I can see anywhere in this book of the minor prophets. And because we're looking at the books of the minor prophets being a parallel prophetic portrayal with the prophecies that Moshe gave, that Yaakov gave, that's written in the stars, we don't try to correlate all these things written on the names of the stones of the breastplate. It's like suddenly to hear, oh, the rapture or this event where Yeshua's in the sky is the great hope. It's like, that's not a hope at all for any of the mind that I see in the entire Bible up until bing, that last moment, that sparkle at the end. And I'm not denying that it's going to happen or that it could happen or should happen or that is a wonderful thing to happen, to have the sky ripped open. There's Yeshua, and then he's behind him is armies. Some people think they're armies of dead humans who are living up in heaven, dressed in white robes on white horses, or are they angelic zavot, forces of legions? Nobody knows what they are. Some people think it's angels, some people think it's humans, whatever. It's King Jesus and his army. Okay, whatever. But what's that got to do with this other stuff? What's the end game? So here we are looking at Zechariah, 14 chapters, and I thought, well, what if I start at the tail end of Zechariah and say, here's the end game. What does it tell us? So if I'm looking at Zechariah 14:8, just look at it in English. It shall be on that day. What day? Well, then you see, you have to back up. Reminds me, there was I think it was a Seinfeld show. I think there was also a movie where they did this, where they show you a scene, and it's like, yeah, but you don't know what's going on. I think it was at Seinfeld. There was a wedding in India, I think is what it was. And then they said, wait a minute, 5 minutes before. And then they show you the scene. It's like, but what was that? 30 seconds before, an hour before. And so the whole episode was reversed in time, going back to the beginning. You're going, oh, now I get it. So for whatever reason, I was looking at Zechariah the same way, starting at the tail end because of what I heard on the radio of the Christian guy talking about Revelation 19. I thought, well, what if I read Zechariah backwards? What's at the end? The very last, okay, the last couple of verses in Zechariah, the very last, verse 20 and 21. On that day, what day? Whenever it says on that day, it was referring to something previously, and you got to look at that, and then look at be free of that. It sets up this way of reading backwards. Anyway, it will be written on the horses' bells, holy unto Hashem. Well, that's not what it says. The word horse is sus, samik, vav, samik. Samik, samik, because yods and vavs can be thrown as the wild cards. Samik, samik is a fluttering flag or a fluttering moth, around a light at night, porch light. It's something that moves quickly and like horses' legs running. Like if you take a video and you see horses' legs running, well, if you take a video and see cars zipping around the city streets, it's the same image. And the word bell, Zadi Lamed, or Bet Zadi Lamed, that which covers over, like a hat covers over, a bonnet, the hood of a vehicle. Well, a car is a covered over thing that runs around. So is it horses' bells, or is it having a bumper sticker on your car? Theoretically, it's exactly the same words, but when it says right here, I'm reading it in English, it will be written on the horses' bells. There's supposed to be horses in Jerusalem, and they have bells on. Do you hear them coming? That's just the tip of the iceberg about what you read in English sets up your mind, but what you read in Hebrew is this whole other thing. It will be on the horses' bells, Kadosh LaYahweh. Well, that's the exact same phrase that was written on the headband of the high priest. So a few years back, made up these little bumper stickers. Stick it on your windshield. Stick it on the bumper of your car. In Jerusalem, in Los Angeles, in Portland, in Tel Aviv. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be in Jerusalem. What I'm saying is, for us to read this and say, let's be that people now, that consciousness. And on the pots in the temple of Elohim will be as numerous as the bowls before the altar. What's it talking about? It'll happen every pot in Jerusalem, every cup, every bowl, every serving tray, and in Judah will be holy unto Hashem, master of legions. Will be kadosh unto Yahuwah Zavot. All those who sacrifice will come and take from them and cook on them, and no longer be any merchants. The word merchant is Canaan. The word Canaan, we talked about this last week, means those who trade, merchants of commerce, also as known as the Phoenicians, in the temple of Yahweh Zavot on that day. That's the end of Zechariah. And it's like, well, what about the end of the world? What about the tribulation? What about Jesus coming back? It says, okay, the concept in people's minds that when something is kadosh la Yahuwah, that's the epitome. What about Jesus coming back with a sword in his mouth? Maybe that is the sword in his mouth. Those who cook, they're not hiding in caves because the monsters are going to get them. They're celebrating in Jerusalem. It shall be on that day. Well, let's back up. Verse 16. It shall be that all who are left over from all the nations who had invaded Jerusalem will come up every year to worship King Yahweh. Hey, what about King Jesus? King Yahweh Zavot. And to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. And it shall be that whichever of the families of the land does not go up to Jerusalem to bow down before the King Yahweh Zavot, there'll be no rain upon them. This is the punishment. Come if they, verse 19, of them that don't go up to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. And it's like, wait a minute. What about the one world takeover of the bad guys, of the devil, the Antichrist, the tribulation? This says, if you don't celebrate Sukkot in Jerusalem, you won't have any rain on your land. It's like, is this saying that the entire world is going to be filled with believers, of people walking in Yahuwah's ways? He says, whether you like it or not, you better come and do this or else you're going to get whacked. No rain, your crops will fail. Whoa. So it's not like the Garden of Eden. This isn't heaven on earth. This is earth on earth. Back up. This is the plague with which Yahuwah will strike all the people that have organized against Jerusalem. Uh-oh. Each one's flesh will melt away while he's standing on his feet, and each one's eyes will melt away in their sockets. Well, from what I understand, that's what happened in Hiroshima when they dropped the atom bomb. The flesh just melted, eyeballs melted, very gruesome. But what I'm saying is, wait a minute, is this the plague that Yahweh will strike the people, or is this that humans are going to do to each other? Yahweh uses the agency of people and devils, demons, whatever, angels. But wait a minute, that's Yahweh killing bad guys. Where's the bad guys running the tribulation? Back up. You get to verse 8. It shall be on that day, spring water, that's the word Mayim Chayim, will flow out of Jerusalem. Half will flow to the eastern sea and half to the western sea. But if this will be in summer and in winter, Yahweh will be king over all the land. On that day, Yahweh will be one, and his name will be one. That's verse 9 of Zechariah 14. So what it says is Yahweh Echad Veshemo Echad. What does that mean? What does it mean Yahweh will be one? And King Yahweh Zavot will be over all the land. It doesn't say anything about Jesus or Yeshua coming down on a horse with his armies. But is that what is happening? Is King Yahweh the same as King Jesus? Why doesn't it say Yeshua? So when you read in the book of Revelation and people are saying, oh, that's the great hope. It's not the hope that's written here that he's going to come back and rapture the church and take us out of here and there's going to be all hell break loose and terrorize all the people left on the earth. This is him, Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, somehow in charge. But this is a prophecy. Verse 9 of Zechariah 14. Yahweh will be king over all the land. What does that mean? That means people walking in his ways, because the word king is melech, mem lamed kaf. Halakha is to walk in his ways. Hey lamed kaf. Mem lamed kaf is just the prefix is the one doing that. So you could say for him to be king is for people to do what he said. On that day, Yahweh will be one, and his name will be one. What does that mean? So for this poster to be called Yahweh Echad is playing into this verse, Yahweh Echad Veshemo Echad. And I'm saying his name, his fame, his renown, the occupation of all his concerns is the 22 letters and the way they're fit in sequence. So it's got the individual value, the sequence value, and the relationship, and then the meta, the change in between every letter. But there's an echadness about that whole thing. And as we saw before, when he says, does anybody comprehend the Amad Basodi? The manifest standing arranged pillars like a row of columns based on the foundation of what? Of this stuff. There's a few other verses here that I'm going to try to get to. What I'm saying is that the understanding of his language, the understanding that everything that he built is the Amad Basodi, that it's expressed in these letters, and somehow the oneness, the echadness of his identity, his name, you can't separate the Father from the Son because the Son is the manifest of the Father, but yet he didn't say worship the Son. He said worship the invisible, immaterial Father. So that the problem that people have a baby Jesus, let's worship him as our God. He didn't say to worship anything manifest as our Elohim, other than the fact that these letters, these words very specifically point to his attributes, his way of thinking, his heart, and then the system order, as I suggested as a prophecy, looking at the 22 letters is the prophecy. And for Yeshua then to come down here, why did he have to die? We did that whole talk of saying he ran the gamut of these 22 letters as this obstacle course, as this line of dominoes. So if we start going back through Zechariah 14:11, people will live in Jerusalem. There will be no more devastation. The word devastation is het resh mem. The letter het is the 8th letter, pronounced similar to a CH or an H or a CX. But it's where we get the word harm, harem. There'll be no more devastation, and Jerusalem will settle in security. The word security there, bet tet het, is where we get the word to trust, confidence, certainly, insured, assured. It's like absolutely at peace. Hasn't happened yet. And I don't believe that in any time throughout history that I have any recognition of, there things might have happened that I don't know, but up until now, this hasn't happened. So for me to say, hey, listen, this can't be the end of the world because stuff hasn't happened yet. This is something that hasn't happened. And I say that very particularly because my whole life I've heard every single prophecy that ever had to happen before the rapture happened or before Jesus comes back has happened. Thus, he could come back at any moment. Revelation 19 was taught in the 1960s and 1970s as being imminent. And then in the 1980s, 88 reasons proving that he's going to return, Revelation 19 in 1988. And then another didn't happen in 88, so they wrote it again in 1989. And it's like, what I'm saying is that if you don't study these things and you're listening to these teachers, that is the consciousness. That is the reality. Well, it didn't turn out to be a reality. Verse 13 of Zechariah 14, exist on day the same, exist, there's mem he vav mem tav, he vav mem, ma homat, trouble, tumult, confusion, panic, noisy, frantic, agitated, manic, yod he vav he. On the same day it'll exist insanity, rava bahem, much among them, Veha Het Zion Yod Kuf. Chazak is strong, be power empowered. Ish Yod Resh Ayin He Vav. Well, remember Resh Ayin, we talked about that. Resh Ayin He a couple weeks ago. It means evil, wicked, harm, calamity, but it's also friend, associate. It's also to think, to purpose, to aim, to shout. It's like, so it's saying in this verse is going to be an insane confusion of panic. Well, we can read other stories. Remember, that happened when Gideon was surrounding on the mountaintops and they broke open the jars of clay and then the torches appeared and they blew the trumpets and he filled the enemy with this panic. And raise, Ayin Lamed Tav He, his hand against the hand of his neighbor. That's verse 13. Yahweh is telling us, I got you covered. You guys, you, my people, won't even have to deal with your enemies. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to send their mind into a panic. But our mind shouldn't be on a panic. Our mind should be in pure betoch, settled in security. This is just 2 verses before or after it says the people living in Jerusalem, no devastation and dwell in security. But he's going to rile with writhing anger and frustration all of our enemies. And if we go, oh no, our job is to be absolutely peacefully confident in Yahuwah. And then he's going to put them into an insane panic of confusion where they're going to kill each other. That's his tactic, which he's used many times if you read through the scripture. Go down to verse 16. And it will be kol ha-notar. Well, that word notar is abundance, superfluous, excessive, remain, leftover. It's the word hypotenuse, yod tav resh, superiority, advantage, makal ha-goyim, So a bunch of the Goyim will be killing each other, but then there's going to be some left over. And they're going to come to Jerusalem and go up as often year by year to bow down to Melech Yahweh Zavot. Lachag, that word chag, het gimel, is for the festival, Chag HaSukkot, or else no rain for them. If that's the end of the story, then you go back to Daniel 2 and you see this statue, and the rock, the ebon, hits the feet and it knocks down the statue. The statue turns to dust and the wind blows it away. And it says no memory or trace of that statue is ever found again. And then the stone, the ebon, the little stone, becomes this mountain that fills the whole earth. And it says, and it won't yield its sovereignty to another. And I remember going to church, oh, that's Jesus coming back. When Jesus comes back, he wipes out all the nations of the earth. But until he comes back, the nations of the earth rule the day. They rule the earth, the prince of the power of the air, the devil, this is his planet. And it's like, I'm sorry, I don't see that perspective. Not only do I not see the perspective, I choose not to believe that perspective. So you have this phrase, the land of make-believe. In the land of make-believe, what if I believe that everything Yahweh said was true? So what if I believe that in Yahweh is Elohim, Kanash Shemayim Ve'eretz, maker of heaven and earth. He made it, therefore it's his, and he's going to wipe out all the enemies by having them kill each other. Insane. He's not even going to sit there and have to do it. What is a sword coming out of Yeshua's mouth? Does he have to grab the sword and throw his head back and forth and cutting people up with a sword? Or does he just speak and it's so? Isn't that the sword coming out of his mouth? What does he speak? He's already told us what he's spoken. It's in his words. All he has to do is say, just like I said, wham, there it is. My job is to have that confidence in that Elohim. And when he calls himself Yahweh Zavot, as we've said before, and again, I'm going over some of these things because this is kind of like this overview of this whole study. Zadi Bet is the word for turtle. Zadi Bet Aleph, the word for army or legion. Vav Tav is the plural. So it's legions, master of legions. The word master isn't there. Yahweh Zavot, but Aleph Vav Tav, looking at it as a word, is the letter of the alphabet. It's a symbol and it's a sworn oath, a promise symbolized by some sort of insignia. So if somebody says, Nam Yahweh, here's 22 letters. That's like this empirical decree, sealed. Oh, I know what that means. I know what it means because I know the array of all 22 letters. And when it's Yahweh Echad, singular, it's like Yahweh has one mind, one heart, one disposition. You're not going to get a different story and a different law, grace versus law with Jesus. Echad. If you've got 4 different things, but when all 4 are lined up, that's Echad, singular. If he says, I'm going to allow some of those guys to live as a remnant, and when they do, if they still rebel against my ways, it's not going to rain. And they're going to be tortured with thirst. So they better conform their behavior, if not their heart. And it's like, this isn't heaven on earth. This is earth on earth. And it's not what we've been told. Okay, now we're going to kind of quickly go back through, starting at the end of Zechariah, going to the beginning, Zechariah 14:2. I'm just a couple key verses. Aesop, that's the word we talked about before, like Aesop's fables, gather, collect, round up all the nations to Jerusalem for battle. And it says they're going to capture and seize the city and plunder the women, ravage the women, and then export half the population of the city into exile, but the remainder of the people are not cut down and stay in the city. It's like, wait a minute. Is Yahweh in charge or not? He's going to allow the nations to come and attack the city of Jerusalem and prevail, but then he's going to come and rescue. What's going on? There's some convoluted narrative, but just so you know, when it says they're going to ravage the women, the word for women there's 2 words. It's Bet Tav Yod Mem. Well, the word Bet Tav is daughter. But sometimes they translate it as houses. So it's Nun, Shin, Samik, Vav would be plunder, spoil, pillage, like sick the dog. Hey, Bet Tov Yod Mem. Well, they say Hey, Bet Tov would be the houses. So they're going to plunder the houses. But the word Bet Tov is daughter, Bet Yod Tov is house, but it means one protected or undercovered, like a village under the auspices of a city government, that a bigger city nearby the village that doesn't have its own government. Then there's the word Hey, Nun, Shin, Yod Mem. Yod Mem is the plural. The word Hey would be the prefix simply meaning like thus. So you get the word Nun, Shin, Yod. Well, Nun, Shin, Aleph means claim a debt. Nun, Shin, Yod is feminine. Nun, Shin, Yod also means to be lift, carry, take, married, to deceive, forget, or beguile. And then the word Tav, Shin Gimel Lamed Nun Hey, is the word, Shin Gimel Lamed is the word for violate or ravish. It's also the word for a concubine or a consort. But Shin can be a prefix letter, mean that which is in the capacity of or belongs to. Gimel Lamed, well, Gimel Lamed, that's the word Gaul, as in Galut, as in Gaul, Europe, before it was called France and Germany and all. It was Gaul in the days of the Roman Empire, was Gaul. Like Galatian. It means to go into exile, to be uncovered, or to discover something, to discover. So it means to take the covering off. So if you look at this and say, well, wait a minute, Bet Tov is the word daughter, but it's the daughter under the authority of a father, or a girl under the authority of a greater power, or a husband. And this is one who has been uncovered by deception or by being beguiled. Well, that's like Adam and Eve in the garden, being deceived and beguiled and losing their covering. Those are the ones that are plundered in the city. It's not that you don't necessarily have to read this, that the women are going to be ravished and the houses plundered, because it's like, well, gee, is Yahweh not in control? What he's saying is, if you don't listen to my words and you don't walk in my ways and you go after the deception, you lose your covering and you are victimized. You will be the victim. So when he says of the devil, he goes about as our adversary goes about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Yeshua talked about that. Well, whom may he devour? Yahweh says that we, his people, should halakha the yashar derek, stay walking on the straight path, in which case we're invincible. So then I have to take on the mind, I'm invincible. Well, if I'm invincible, then why? Don't look at the circumstances. Don't work at the circumstances of you caught cold, or you can't pay your bills, or your car broke down. There's a story, I believe it's maybe in Samuel. David, the prophet, came to him and said, hey, Yahweh has given you a gift that your legacy, your name, your family will rule on the throne of Israel, you and your sons. It's like, what? Well, that means I'm not going to die. My enemies aren't going to kill me. So that means I'm going to be victorious. Woohoo! So David went out, the very next chapter, he goes out and he attacks all his neighbors and conquers all their lands and takes over the land of Israel, as was promised. When David was told, you're going to prevail, you're going to win, you'll be invincible, because that's Yahweh's gift to you for being of his heart and trusting him. When Abraham had the same attitude, he had 300 guys, and according, I think it was the book of Jasher, they're saying 80,000 or 800,000 of the enemy, the 5 kings that had come down and sacked Sodom and the cities of the plains, 300 against 800,000, and they prevailed. Doesn't matter what the numbers are. Saul had 2 swords, 600 guys, and his people were leaving. The valley was filled. There could have been 600,000 of the enemy, maybe more, armed to the teeth. That's where Jonathan went up and to the garrison, and he and his armored bearer, took out those guys. And then this panic rolled down the hill like an avalanche, and everybody down there started killing each other. It's like, That's our Elohim at work. We need to take on the mind that when he gathers the nations, the World Economic Forum, the Bilderbergs, the Illuminati, the Rothschild, the banksters, the NATO, the whoever you want to stick in the capacity of the United Nations of those banding together against Yahuwah, we need to realize Yahuwah's invincible. He cannot be conquered. And if we're his people, the promise that he gave us is we win. We don't have to take something stabbed in us. Here, it'll be either a chunk of lead that we shoot into you at high velocity or some toxins that we squirt into your arm. Either way, we're going to put it. No, we don't have to do that. Okay, well, we're going to lock you up in camps. No. I am Yahuwah's, Kadosh LaYahweh. That has to be right there on our mind. That's our only sanity and our only hope. Verse 3, export Yahweh, that's Zadi Aleph, to blossom out, Nun Lamed Chet Mem. That's Nun, in, like a lightning bolt, engaging battle, Begoyim, against the Goyim, with the Goyim. And they, like the day of battle, Beyom Kuf Resh Bet, come near, befriend, midst, offer, sacrifice, approach, relationship. Yahweh's saying, hey, listen, I'm waiting for this day. I'm just chomping at the bit, as it were. It's like, come on, bring it. Like, well, how do we bring it on? Everything is about, Yahweh said in another place, not here, he said, when Israel turned his back on Yahweh's words, went looking for Elohim Akrim, the gods of the Egyptians, the god of the Assyrians, any other god, the god of the Canaanites, the gods of the Mayans and the Aztecs and the whoever's, it just burned his heart and got him so disturbed, and it broke all his dreams. It crushed his heart and broke his dreams. So he called in the enemies, and then they, besides of them coming in naturally, and when Ephraim was so crushed, specifically Ephraim, also Yehuda, but two different stories of two different groups, and we'll see where he tore apart the brotherhood, but in Ezekiel 37, he's going to bring it back. Hasn't happened yet. But then when his people stop and turn and listen to his voice and walk in his ways, suddenly, when they cry out in despair of anguish of their enemies oppressing him, his heart can't take it. His heart breaks for his people, and everything changes. All we have to do is read the storyline. An interesting verse 8 of Zechariah 13, 8 and 9, exist all the earth, Nam Yahweh. And again, when he says Nam Yahweh, like this Nam Yahweh, it's like the emperor signing something and putting his signet ring in it. It says, Pe Shanim, different mouth of her, Yod Kaf Resh Tav Vav. That's word for cut, hewn, destroyed. Exist among all the earth a different voice of being cut down. And Gimel Vav Ayin, Yod Gimel Vav Ayin Vav, die, perish, expire, the 1/3. But then there's Yod Vav Tav Resh, Bet Hey. Bet Hey was in it or of her. Yod Vav Tav Resh, well, Tav Resh Hey means forewarned or to warn. Tav Resh is search or explore, but they're saying this is the leftovers. So they're saying Yod Vav Tav Resh means more excessive, fat, lobe, remainder, leftover. Shin Aleph Resh is also the remnant or leftover. And it's like, what is he saying? Is he saying those that took the warning, those who took the warning will survive? It's translated 2/3. The word Shin Nun Yod Mem. Well, Shani is 2. So they're saying, well, that means 2/3 will be destroyed and 1/3 remain. Doesn't necessarily say that. Pe shanim, a different mouth of not taking warning will die. That's one way to read it. And it's like a different mouth of what? Again, you have to go back. It says Nam Yahweh, and that's where the mouth of our Elohim spoke. Any different mouth, you're dead. No hope. But that means we have hope. Verse 9, Vav He Bet Aleph Tav Yod. Tav Yod, the suffix means I will or I have. Bet Aleph is arrive, enter, bring in. Ha Shalishit, the 1/3, Ba'ash. Well, that's Bet is the prefix, means into. Aleph Shin is the word for fire. And I'm going to bring those that survive, I'm going to bring into the fire. But Bet also means through. So now he says, I'm going to refine them. The word Zadi Resh Pei is refine like the refinement of silver. Kaf Samik Pei. The word for Zadi Resh Pei, smelt, refine, test, clean, purify, attach, join, but it's a combination like finding a common money system. If you go to one country and you come back into this other first country and you need to change the money, that's what's going on. So it's something have to do with combination, finding a common, it's kind of like almost like a one world economy. And then there's this word bet het nun, assay, auditor, examine, test, trial, distinguish, differentiate, like gold. Now, wait a minute. It's translated, I'll refine them the way silver is refined, and I'll try them the way gold is tried. But the word for clean, test, purify, smelt, refine like silver is almost looks like this one world economic, like bringing together a unified longing. But the word for gold is to distinguish and differentiate or to make separate. It's the opposite. So again, in English, you're going to see one thing. Look at in the Hebrew, the word for gold is Hey, Zion, Hey, Bet. Hey is the prefix letter the, Zion, Hey, Bet. So we did this talk back in 2011 where Abba Zaba. Zaba is the word for gold. It's like Father's Gold, that candy bar called Abba Zaba. But the word Zion Hey means this, or Zion Hey means to be identified. Zion Bet, the Hey is in between, Zion Hey Bet, is a flow or a flux. And then it says Hey Vav Aleph, which means the same thing. Then here's this word Yod Kuf Resh Aleph. He called, or he learned to read. And then it says Beshami Ve'ani Aleph Ayin Nun Hey Aleph Tavav. So he's basically saying, among those who are rescued, though 2/3 are going to die, the ones that were listening to a different voice, then the 1/3 that he refines, there's this kind of like this unification, like this one money system, but then there's a separation of identifying his name by learning to read. And I will answer attentively, Ayin Nun Hey, to him, and I will declare my people while they are saying Yahuwah Elohi. So this is that verse, Zechariah 13:9, which I've mentioned before. If there's one script you got to learn Yahuwah Elohi. Learn to read his name. And it's not just, how do you say the 4 letters Yod He Vav He? So again, going back to this Yahweh Echad poster, his name will be one, his reputation. It's not like, we were under law, now we're under grace. It was the old, now it's the new. It's the Jesus, it's the Father, it's this one concept of Yahweh Zavot, Elohim of Israel. That's who he is, and that's who we are, the Echadness. And when we say Yahuwah Elohi, it's not, well, are you talking about Jesus sitting on his right hand? Or are you talking about big, ugly, mean monster God of the Old Testament? It's like, it's the one and only. And Yahweh says, finally, this is my people. In which case, whatever the picture is of Yeshua in Revelation 19 is just part of the story. So then I can say, well, what part of the story? The alphabet. So if I look at the alphabet saying, well, wait a minute, if him being crucified is Hey Vav Zion, behold this man, put to the weapon Zion and put into the tomb, Chet, round rock, rolled in front, Tet, sealing him in. He's in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights, Kaf Lamed, Mem Nun, Samak and Pei, and then Pei bursts open, Zadi, him resurrecting, Kuf, he hung around for 40 days, he floated up in the air, and the angel said, as he did, he's coming back. So Kuf is not only to rise up like this mushroom shape, our letter Q, but also like this opening with pouring out is him coming back to this same place, pouring out what? What follows is Resh, Shin, Tav. Well, the word Reshat, Reshin Tav, is a net, a trap, a snare. Kuf is like a sickle, so it's like gathering up yours and taking as you prepared, but also Reshin has to do with authorized and permitted. But Resh is the honored man, the exalted man, the big guy in the sky. Sheen is this fire. That's a picture of Revelation 19. So for Yeshua to leave as Zadi Kuf, float up, and come back, Revelation 19, I can see that as being Resh Shin Tav. So it's not in disagreement. And I can say, is that our hope? And it's like, well, certainly it's this hope set before us, but it's not the Christian hope. It's Israel's hope. Heck yeah. But the hope is he's coming back for us walking in his ways, not believing that he did away with his ways. He's going to say, this is my people because we're achad with everything going on. Okay, back up, Zechariah 12. Yahweh will protect the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So if we look at Zechariah 12, verses 8, 9, and 10. On that day, Yahweh will protect the inhabitant of Jerusalem. On that day, even the weakest among them will be like David, and the house of David will be like divine beings, like an angel of Yahweh before them. We're going to be the monster warriors, which are inconquerable. It shall be on that day, I will seek to destroy all the nations that come upon Jerusalem. I will pour out upon the house of David and upon the inhabitant of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplications. They will look toward me because of those whom they have stabbed. It gets into this. Some people say, well, that's a prophecy of Yeshua. But my point is, where's the story of us getting tribulated? It has happened in history various times, but we're under the envelope of the curse of not looking to him, not listening to him, not seeking him, not knowing him, not being part of his covenant. On that day, Yahweh will protect the inhabitant of Jerusalem. Has that happened, or is that in front of us? We're going backwards through Zechariah. Go to Zechariah 11. It talks about 30 pieces of silver being thrown to the treasurer. The word there is Adar Hayakur. Aleph Dalet Resh, exalted, glorified, magnificent, splendor, mantle, garment. It's an animal skin. It was the word like the 12th month. And at the Erictology class, the letter Aleph, I wore this leather kind of call it a vest or jerkin type of a thing, where that's the word Aleph Dalet Resh. Hakir Kuf Resh or Yod Kuf Resh, precious, valuable, rare, costly, honored, heavy, increase their prestige. Yod Kuf Resh Tav Yod, I will increase their value. Mem Ayin Lamed Hey Hey Mem, prestige, success, dignity, elevation. Zechariah 11:14. Then I believe Zechariah here has two sticks, two staffs that he is shepherding his flocks. And we're going backwards. Remember, I broke my second staff called Hobalim. He had two staffs. The first one was called Noam, which is Nun ayin mem, which literally means pleasant, delightful, lovely, charm, melodious, musical. And hobalim means damage, injury, wounded, destroyed, ruined, corrupted. To bind by taking a pledge, a measured portion, ropes or rigging. What does that got to do with anything? He annulled the brotherhood between Yehuda and Israel. Well, it's in Ezekiel 37 that he restores the brotherhood, which hasn't happened yet, which is why the Jews still want nothing to do with Christians or with the northern kingdom. They think there's still this separation. What I'm saying is that the binding of the pledge is when our forefathers said, everything Yahweh said, we will hear and we will do. That's the chabel. And if we don't do what he said to do, we're going to suffer the damage accordingly. For the family, the 12 tribes, to walk together in unity is nun ayin mem. Ayin mem is the word for which is people. It's also translated as the word with. And they will be my people, ayin mem yod. So nun ayin mem is to actually be engaged as the common-hearted people, pleasant, delightful, lovely, charming, melodious. Hasn't happened yet. 11, Zechariah 11, verse 8, my soul became impatient. That's kuf zadi resh, which is short or cut off. It's like tired of with them for their soul also. That word also is gimel mem. Again, this reciprocal relation found me to be repulsive. Well, that word repulsive there is bet chet lamed hey, which means kala. That's where we get the word sweet or pleasant, but it's also weak, sick, ill, hollow, profane, disgust, loathed, abhorred. For Israel to become tired of Yahweh, disgusted with Yahweh, sick of him and his stupid ways of unleavened bread and festival of Sukkot and blah, blah, sit down on Shabbat. His attitude about his people gets cut off. The opposite is the recovery. He goes on to say in 11:9, I said, I will not tend you. Let the dying one die, the decimated one be decimated. And for the remaining ones, let them each devour the other's flesh. So Yahweh says, oh, you don't want my attention? Goodbye, you're on your own. Whatever happens, happens. You won't listen to my voice when I speak. I won't listen to your cries when you scream. But Zechariah 10, shriek, shin resh kuf. Bright red, whistle, east wind, mock, derided, the shriek unto them and kibbutz them. He says, it's translated, I will whistle for them and call them back, pay dalet yod, separate, free, release, redeem, deliver, ransom, and multiply like the quantification or the multiplication, resh bet vav. It's translated, they will become more than they were before. They will become more significant than they were before. Were before is when? It's got to be either the days of David, the days of Moshe, or the days of Abraham. Well, David was the pinnacle, you might say the golden years. But this is saying there's time coming which will be more significant, greater in number or greater in significance. Hasn't happened. It's in front of us. So verse 9, this is of Zechariah 10, Aleph, Zion, Resh, Ayin, Mem. Well, Ayin, Mem is the word for people. Zion, Resh, Ayin is the word for scattered seed among the Gentiles in the Mem, Resh, Het, Kuf, Yod, Mem. Well, Resh, Het, Kuf is the far side, distant, dimension, remote, removed, expelled. And they remembered me, Zakar. What we are doing by Zakaring Yah, walking, trying to regard his language, his Moedim, his Shabbat, his name, the value of his ethics, his morals, his reigns, R-E-I-G-N, as well as R-E-I-N. His Mosar is like reins, the bit and bridle of a horse. It's like, how does he want us to walk? How does he want us to think? The reason for learning this language is to take these matters on, and it says, Vechai et beniham veshuvu. So their children will live and return, because they remembered me, though I had scattered them amongst the other nations. It's this act of zakaring Yah that we're doing is what turns the whole thing around. We're running out of time here. There's a couple more. Gosh, there's a couple more really important things. We're gonna have to do this again next week. But there's a particular verse. Zechariah 3:9. Let me just jump ahead to that. It says, Al eben achat veshava ayanim hineni me petach petacha. Ayin lamed is a yoke with stone, eben, aleph chet tav, it says here. Well, the word aleph chet dalet is one, or unified, but this is aleph chet tav, which also means one. Shin bet ayin hey means 7. Ayin yod nun yod mem. Well, ayin yod nun is eye, so this is eyes. So 1 stone, 7 eyes, and then hineni is behold, here I am. Mem petov chet hey. It's translated, behold, I am engraving its adornment. Engraving its adornment. Well, petov chet is to cut something open. Petov hey is to be enticed, allured, a fool, a simpleton, one, you might say, drawn after harlots. Petov chet is a fence, a protection, the pasture guarded. Petov is that which opens. So a mem, petov chet, is a key, or the tool, the mem, the tool that causes the opening. Petov chet hey is what's expressed by the opening. Here, behold, here I am, the key of expressing what's opening. And it's like, what's he talking about? Zechariah 3:9, 7 eyes toward 1 stone, behold, I'm engraving its adornment. The word for stone, eben, like the stone that hits the feet of the statue, aleph bet nun. Aleph is a prefix letter, I will. Bet is to be. Nun, in action. Aleph bet, the word father, or to have a desire. Bet nun, son, or to understand, or to be the manifest. So you put that all together. Could it be that the word stone is, I will do the will of my Father, being and manifesting as a good son? Exactly what Yeshua said, the son of the Father. The word aleph chet is brother. Het tov means one, but het tov also means shattered, dismayed, terror, and fear. Tov het tov, where one stands, because of, on account of, instead of, or underneath it all. So the word aleph chet tov, though it's simply translated one, it can mean in the midst of dismay, I'm going to stand on Yahweh Echad. Shavah, Shin Bet Ayin Hey, is not just the number 7, but it means the vow, the curse to satisfy and fulfill the vow, or get cursed because you don't. And ayinim, eyes, the word eye, page 470 in the Red Dictionary, balance exactly, to read, to determine, to calculate, to measure, to weigh. It's to understand it. And if you go to the previous verse, there's this verse in 4:14. These are the 2 sons standing beside the Lord of all the earth. The word for anointed is where you get the word Zohar, is Hey Yod Zadi Hey Resh, and it means shining oil, anointed, window opening, zenith, culminating point, declared, exposed to the sun, brightness, estimation, valuation, ha'amadim, position, standing place, the load imposed upon, columns, the estimation value. What I'm saying is that the word Eric, Ayin Rash Kaf, the word Shin Aleph, Shin Ayin Resh Sair, which we talked about before, and Mem Nun Hey is synonyms with ayin, and it's basically saying to 5 minutes to comprehend the value of what he built as the law of the universe in these words, in these letters. In Zechariah 4, where he sees a menorah and 2 olive trees, and he says, what are these? Then he says, again, he asks the question, what are these 2 clusters of olives with this press squeezing the oil that's going directly into feeding the menorah? What is this? And the answer was, these are the 2 men standing beside the Lord of all the earth. It's like, what? These is the word 2 means is Shinun Yod, asleep, different, disguised, perverted, changed. Shin Nun Hey. It also means teach, repeat, read, and teeth. Bet Nun Yod, sons of the Zohar, sons of the shining, anointed men. It doesn't say men. These are the 2. This is the teaching of building the understanding of how the truth got changed and perverted and coming back to the anointed standing, the Amadim. And basing your understanding, jumping ahead in reverse down to 3:9, that's taking 4:14 to 3:9 and saying, I have allowed the opening of that which was hidden so that you, us, can come back to this. And he goes on to say in 3:7, if you halakha my derek, if you shamar what is supposed to be shamarred, if you deen my bet, and you shamar my chet zadi resh, which is the word for courtyard, like this is my pasture land, then I will grant you to stand among these here, which is like the celestial beings. What I'm saying is this study of knowing what these words mean, looking at what these letters, comprehending them to be the Amad Basodi, changing the understanding of being a stupid lost language or perverted doctrines to actually being, this is our Elohim. This is his promise. This is his words of hope, of a future, of Mayim Chayim. And it's accessed and conducted by this effort of looking at what he said, letter by letter, word for word. Backing up, whoever touches you will be poking his finger in his own eye. Many nations will join themselves to Yahweh on that day, chapter 2, verse 15, and they will become a people unto me, and I will dwell in your midst. 2:16, Yahweh will take Yehuda as his heritage. And then backing up to 2:4 with the 4 carpenters, the word carpenter there, chareshim, literally the word charesh, we'll end with this, silent, deaf. Think about all these definitions of charesh. Silent, deaf, mute, to plow or engrave, sylvan, dark woods, like we get the word Sylvania or Transylvania, creepy dark woods, magic arts, a worker in wood, metal, or pottery, devised, planned, fabricated, industry, or manufacturing, skillful artisan, earthenware, vessel, secretly carved, engraving, inscribed. The word epigraph is similar, het resh tav, something that you write as a saying, as a poem, as a before, it's like famous quotes type of thing. So here's somebody that writes words which other people can't understand, like paleo letters carved into wood, metal, or pottery. Us coming back to this language, understanding these things that most people think are just cryptic, creepy, dark sylvan nothingness, I believe, is the 4 carpenters. And again, the word 4 means to fructify the soil, mate animals, or facilitate growth and reproduction. It's to unleash the Mayim Chayim, the flowing springs of living water that will replenish the entire earth and restore the dormant seeds that are scattered all around the entire planet. Is us coming back to these words. Our consciousness walking around the planet is shedding light wherever, like Yeshua said, do you put your light under a bushel? No, put it on a lampstand that it can have its effect. Yehi or. That's what this study is. We're out of time for this week. Again, if anybody wants to say anything, you're welcome to, unless we're out of time. That's Kurt's call, but there you go. So people can turn on their mics and cameras. Hugo, you got anything to say real quick before we're out of time?
Yes, real quick. The letter Aleph. And the idea of Ad. If we look at the modern way to write it, there's this line there that I suggest it is the idea of a language barrier, because you've got the mind. Aleph means to domesticate. So the mind of the domesticator and the mind of the domesticated. And this line is just a language barrier. And it's a bit our situation now with the creator and his language. There's this language barrier that for us to be domesticated to him. I mean, we've got to, like you say, know how to read. So it's a bit the idea there in the Aleph. And then once we get domesticated, we're echad, we're just one with him. Simple as that. Thank you.
Good point. But see, not only is the language the barrier, the language is the bonder. The language is that which ties us with him. He's made it that way. He gave us that with the intent. It's the tool that he built that works.
I have to go.
Huh?
I have to go. I'm out of time.
Okay.
I know we try to push it every single week, but
every last second.
I've only got 2 hours to edit, and that's it. It's going to take me a couple of days, so
no problem.
But there is the after show. And then let's see. The last piece is what was it? Candace. It's Candace up in Canada there. Hit me up on Facebook. I need your address, so when the Red Dictionary is back in print, I can get it out to you. But hey, everybody, thank you. I think we're going to hit 1,000 people in the next 2 weeks, so it's awesome. I'm going to end it in prayer. Thank you, Father, for another lesson. Thank you for this time and this community and everybody who's waking up to your Moedim, and another person keeping your Shabbat. In Yahuwah's name I pray. Amen. Amen. All right. Shalom, guys. The after show begins.